Record. Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Cornwell, certified nurse midwife with Midwifery Business Consultation, and I have my good friend Cassandra Aho with Midnight Midwifery Consulting. And we have been talking about how it's so important to have resources around intimate partner violence. And I would love Cassandra just to talk more about why she's passionate about this topic and what great resources she's been creating and more to come.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Just a heads up, you'll hear baby giggles in the background, and that's just life. So I am Cassandra Aho. I'm a CPM, and I am currently living in Washington State. Midnight Midwifery is an intimate partner violence consulting firm. And before I kind of get into what I do, I'd love to talk about kind of what brought me there. When I was much younger and having my first babies, I myself was in a relationship that was pretty volatile. And the only time that I sought care was during pregnancy, and there were no screenings. That's not true. There was usually the "Do you feel safe at home?" question, and I wasn't offered any resources. This was long before I even knew I wanted to be a birth worker. I didn't even know that was a thing. And after I left that relationship, I started at group counseling for domestic violence. And there were lots of people that were pregnant and did not want their abusive partner at the hospital. So I said, oh, hey, I'll go with you. I've had kids. I know how this works. And I watched kind of this systematic breakdown of women that had fought so hard for freedom and to build themselves back up and to just really change who they were at the core. And they were so strong. And then during birth, the obstetric abuse just completely dismantled them all over again. And so after attending a few of those and actually getting kicked out of the room several times for saying things like, you can't do that to her, or, speaking up, I realized I needed to do a job that couldn't get me kicked out of the room. That was my most important thing. So I started researching about birth work and how I could get involved with that, because my own birth with my children just changed everything. It changed who I was at the core. And that's what midwifery is all about, right? Like, we know that birth is so transformative. And so I started off as a doula. I did the training, but I realized, you can still get kicked out of the room. So then I found midwifery, and I attended MCU, and this is where I am now. I graduated last year, and yeah.
So I guess my curiosity would be, what made you go the direction of, instead of saying, okay, I'm gonna fight the fight, holding their hand, advocating with transfers and a great birth experience, what made you go the direction of more the consulting service side?
That is an excellent question. I think a lot of people get really confused when a fresh graduate doesn't necessarily want a home birth practice. But the reality is that throughout my education at MCU, I devoted kind of all of my brain power to intimate partner violence during pregnancy. And I realized very, very quickly that midwives are trained and so skilled to handle emergencies that they may never encounter in their entire practice. And intimate partner violence is incredibly common. 1 in 3 clients potentially could be victims of intimate partner violence, and there's no training around it. There's no information around it. There are no screening tools that we're not taught in school or really in life. There's not a lot out there for providers to learn how to handle intimate partner violence. And so often, what people don't realize is that a mistake could be life-threatening. A mistake on a provider's end could end somebody's life. And so it's really important that providers learn how to handle these situations.
Well, I think it's awesome you found such a need. And yeah, I wouldn't take it with a grain of salt about being a new graduate. I think it's just you knew your calling and you went for it. I mean, I am a huge advocate, as you know, of midwives. If they have that entrepreneurial spirit, they find a need and filling it. It's not just catching babies to be midwives. I think that branching out of that idea of with women, like I talk to accountants, I talk to people that are resources for midwives and their businesses that love midwives or wanted to be a midwife and it didn't work for that point of their life and they have regret. And I said, we have to get outside of this scope that a midwife, if you didn't catch a baby, you're not a true midwife, or if you didn't go down that XYZ path. And so I think it's awesome that you've really you're very passionate about this topic. You know so much. Did you do additional training or certifications, or was it more of life experiences and just some self-teaching methods? I'm curious what direction you went.
Initially it was a little bit of both. I just used every kind of, any resource available to me, whether it be free online courses or meeting with people. And then when I finished midwifery school, because as you know, that is an all-encompassing program, that's when I kind of changed gears and got more formal training on victim advocacy. So even starting next week, I will be in yet another 8-week course to become a certified victim advocate. So I will always continue learning and growing. My personal experience can only carry me so much. It affords me an emotional understanding that many providers or many people that haven't been in this situation, they don't have
deeper empathy. I think it's that deeper, it's a deeper connection. It's a deeper passion and drive because you really, instead of talking the talk, you've walked, I mean, not to say it's a good walk, but you've been in their shoes. You've actually, you can understand and relate to such a deeper level. And I think that'll give you a massive edge with educating providers, helping out midwives all over the country. So I think it's amazing what you're doing. And I guess with your practice, what is the core mission? Where do you see yourself serving midwives the best? Is it mass as education? Is it creating more resources? Kind of branch that direction more.
I think a little bit of everything. At this point, creating course information has been incredibly, I've been really driven to do that. I think that you have to start somewhere, right? So everybody can start off by learning the basics, and that's what I provide in my courses. And then from there, I offer materials just to make life easier, right? I mean, the things that I have available through consulting would be, various forms to help keep your practice organized in the safest way possible. Because as midwives, we love our protocols. We love our, written down, this is what we do, this is our guide. So in the future, I really plan to put out kind of a guide or a workbook that is so easy. It's just a fill in the blanks for your community. I want to take all the work out of it, all the legwork out, so that when thinking about building a practice that is safe for intimate partner violence victims, it's not this dread of, oh, that's so much work, I don't want to do it. I want it to be so easy that any midwife at any place can say, I can do this in an hour, I can gather the correct resources, and I can have it ready.
Kind of like a strategic customized resource book, and kind of knowing who's in your community and the gateways to go to is what you're advocating for, that piece of their business implementation.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing for midwives is to be prepared ahead of time, right? Like, we don't want to scramble in the event of the emergency. And statistically, like I said, 1 in 3 clients are potentially facing this. So if somebody does come to you as a practicing midwife, the best thing to say is, I am all ready. Grab your book and I'm all ready to do what it is that you need, versus, oh, let me get back to you, I have to make some calls. That's where it gets dangerous, when people aren't ready.
That makes total sense. I never looked at it that direction, and that statistic is so staggering to me that, oh my goodness, every third lady we have for a consult, we don't go through our mind, we think as innocent. I guess maybe you want to talk the direction of the stereotype with midwives and the typical clients we serve and that family dynamic. I think we make too many assumptions of that variation in normal on all aspects of social status, not just their clinical side. Do you want to expand on that more?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the reality is that, according to the World Health Organization, more than 3 million women in the United States every year are victims of intimate partner violence. Of those, 325,000 of them are pregnant. And intimate partner violence is one of those things that there's the list of risk factors are not scientific, right? When we're dealing with GBS or GDM or whatever, hypertension, right? We're mentally thinking of these clinical checklists. Intimate partner violence isn't like that. It crosses all boundaries. It can happen to anyone. There are certainly people that are at higher risk, but it
seems more like the direction of shoulder dystocia. It seems more like when you expect it, it doesn't happen. And it reminds me when you're talking about like, it sounds like the algorithm of shoulder dystocia. Maybe we should do a fun comparison flyer.
Yes, no, that's exactly it. I mean, you have that with people that you'd never expect, but then never with people you would. And the thing too is that there's a lot of cultural background with intimate partner violence. That there are nuances that are just really difficult to understand unless you're living in it. We live in a culture, unfortunately, that perpetuates violence to women. And so when that's your clientele, that's who you're going to get, is people that are victims of violence.
I guess I'm so excited about the online series you have coming up. If you want to talk a little bit about your upcoming courses, what you're planning on rolling out the next 3 to 6 months, and then we'll let you get to that sweet little baby I hear in the backdrops.
Perfect. The course, I love this course. I think that it's a really, really great basic level course for the very wide spectrum of intimate partner violence. So it's a 4-part series. It goes through, the first part is what is intimate partner violence, who is affected. It talks a lot about again, our culture of violence towards women. And then throughout, I talk in the second part of the series, I talk a little bit about the characteristics of an abuser, because I think that's something that is, again, a little bit misunderstood. So I go into that, and I have obtained some excellent studies that really shed light on that. And then from there, the third part, I talk about universal screening for intimate partner violence, as well as congruent screens that should be at least considered. There's a lot of things that could go hand in hand, right? Like STI screening and things like that. And then the very last part is where we kind of talk about mandatory reporting and what it is that providers are supposed to do. So throughout this series, there's a lot of information about how specifically to make a practice safer, what to avoid, because being a healthcare provider, there's a lot of power to create a wonderful environment, but there is a huge office for just a few minutes and then they leave. Whatever influences you have could make their life really difficult. So we talk a lot about that in the course.
Well, and I think it's amazing you do the perspective of out of hospital midwifery private practice, because I think a lot of times we don't have continuing education for our unique situations. We get a lot of medical education that's to hospital systems and doctors and not necessarily what our situation and resources are. So I think it's great you're customizing it specifically to home birth, out of hospital midwifery practices and how they can advocate for their ladies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for your time today, Cassandra, and I look forward to more of our conversations. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.